Depending on the context and the place where chords appear, the same chord symbol needs another scale or needs another sound. Hey dear friends, here I'm back with another video, and today it's going to be on Getting Sentimental Over You. It's a very beautiful jazz standard, not so well known maybe, and I'm going to show you some recordings that you can listen to, especially Jim Hall, right? He's playing absolutely great solo on this tune, and today I just want to really analyze this this jazz standard, but also really talk about how the analysis and also the hearing and what you're playing over it is not always connected, but sometimes, or anyways, I wanted to say, it's still so important that you are able to analyze chords. And why is that important? Because it will give you an understanding how chords belong to each other. You're going to start to see chords more like in chunks of chords, in groups of chords that belong together and that might do something surprisingly in some cases, but that will help you not to see each chord separately, right? Trying to remember each chord separately, but you're going to think more in progressions. And there are some progressions that occur more often than others, and of course they all look different in different keys. So that's why it's so important to transpose so that you can recognize the same stuff in different keys. And if you're working with Roman numerals like functional theory, right, then you already can see the function of a chord, right? Like if we're talking about intervals, right, like a 6 or a 7 or flat 2, we can think C to D flat, that's a flat 2, right? But then the number is flat 2, right? And it is always the same number, whatever notes you're playing. And that's the same with the chord. So in this tune, it's an F. The first chord's an F major. And that's our tonic, right? So it would get the number 1, like a Roman numeral. So this functional theory stuff is always in Roman numerals, right? And so today you can have a look at secondary dominants. There are lots of secondary dominants. There's one chord that's a little bit more tricky that I'm going to talk about in a minute. I'm also going to talk about minor, because minor is sort of more complex than major, because we have different minors, like minor 7, like more like the Dorian sound, we have the Aeolian sound, we have melodic minor. And when we have a minor chord, depending on the context, we also can sort of change the meaning of this chord. Is it more like a tonic chord, like a 1 chord, or is it like more like a 2 chord going to a 5 chord? So more often than not, the 2 chord sometimes gets to be a 1 chord, or the 3 chords going to be a 1 chord. So don't be confused. And let's get started, right? So the tune starts with the tonic. It's F major. We can play everything F major on an F major chord. And maybe if you want to think about avoid notes, don't rest on the B flat, the 4, for the moment, because it's a chord, it's a note that obscures the quality of the chord or the character of the chord, and that the character of the chord is major. And this works like a suspension, right? The 4. So if you release it to the 3, then that's cool, but maybe not stay on it for a long time. At least in the beginning, when you're really trying to hear what you're playing. So in the next 2 bars, we have the B minor 7 and the E7. And we could think, right, the E7 would be a secondary dominant, 5 going to 3. But I also have been thinking, oh, I have been seeing this chord progression in other places. For example, I remember U starts like this, and also not so easy to understand that it's the same thing, but also Stella by Starlight starts like this. Stella by Starlight is in B flat major, and E minor 7 would be like the chord on the raised 4. The E minor, if you want to analyze the E minor, is on the raised 4. And here in F, the B minor is on the raised 4. And jazz harmony has trends too, right? And there has been a trend, and still it's used a lot, to play a diminished chord instead of the tonic, or like to make it a little bit more spicy. So instead of playing a major F major chord, you would play a diminished chord, like a complete diminished chord. You might know that from Corcovado. This also works like a suspension, and it has been used a lot, maybe more in the past, I don't know. But the trend is to have a lot of 2-5-1s everywhere. And so if you think about an F diminished, that can be a substitute for an E7, right? Just one note, the F goes to the E. And then we have an E7, and the 2 chord of the E7 is B minor 7. And that's what's happening here, right? So if you want to do this 2-5 disguises a diminished chord, and now very easily you can just play Dorian over it, like B Dorian, E7, E mixolydian, or thinking even A major. So we have like a complex analysis and then a very easy solution for the improvisation. But still, I think it's very important to know this background, and maybe you can try to analyze this for yourself. If you think about Stella by Starlight, then you would have like a B flat diminished in the first bar instead of E half diminished A7. And that, if you know this, then you have the option also of playing like a whole tone half tone scale, or a half tone whole tone scale in this case. And that, so with this knowledge, right, all those chords, they are all very special, right? And depending on the place where they occur in 4 bars, and but also how long they last, and also on which degree they are of the scale, be sure that you all really understand how different they are. And if you think about E half diminished A7 is replacing B diminished, B flat diminished in Stella, and in our, now let's play the same thing, B half diminished, F diminished, sorry, replacing B minor 7, E7, right? Then I can think, okay, I can play this Dorian stuff, but I also, because of my knowledge of this hidden diminished chord, and this is the only place where that works, right? I can play like E half tone, whole tone. Moving on, the next 2 chords, A half diminished and D7. Okay, if you're analyzing something, always start with a dominant 7th chord. The chord that has like a major third and a flat 7. Always, that's the characteristic of a dominant 7th chord, right? It's a dominant 7th chord, but then we still have to check on which degree is it in this key. We are in 1 key in F. So the D7 is on the 6th degree. So our 5 chord would be the C7 on the 5th degree. But now we have a dominant 7th chord, 1, 3, 5, flat 7 on the 6th degree, and that's a secondary dominant because it has the root of this dominant 7th chord is part of the F major scale, right? Because F major, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, and then instead of having a D minor 7, we have a D7 chord. We're always going to ask ourselves with the secondary dominance, where is it going to resolve to, right? So D7 wants to go to G. And G is also a note that is in the F major scale, and that's good news because then we can really be sure this is a secondary dominant. In this tune, it's A half diminished, D7 going to G7. We would have expected a G minor 7, right? Because on the 2nd degree in F major, we have G minor chord. And so we're going to analyze those 2 chords, the A half diminished and the D7. We just look at them like they would be going to minor. And since they're going to minor, it's like a 2-5-1 going to G minor. So you can think about the A half diminished, the D7 is just like dragging it along. Every dominant 7th chord, you can put the 2 chord in front of it. You can just do that. And so when I see this, also because I know the keys by heart, I see A half diminished and D7. I immediately go, oh, that's a 2-5-1 in G minor. I can, for example, play the G harmonic minor scale over both chords, or I can play like the melodic minor scales over A half diminished, C melodic minor, and over D7 like an altered sound, the E flat minor. And I'm ignoring the fact that it doesn't even resolve to G minor. It resolves to G. The G minor has been transformed into a G7 chord. So we have another dominant 7th chord. On which degree? On the 2nd degree, right? Where would it resolve to? To C7. So this one is special because we would say 5 going to 5, right? 5, it's a 5 chord, but not the 5 chord of the key. It's the 5 chord going to the 5 chord. And in this case, if you think about take the A train, we have exactly this type of chord, like C major 7. D7, right? Going to G7. There's a little 2, we can ignore it. And so I know this kind of secondary dominant. It's like a friend on the 2nd degree. Every chord is special, right? So not all chords are equal. So it's like, oh, I know that the mixolydian in sharp 11 sound scale really sounds good here. So in G7, in F major, would be a G7 sharp 11. I would try this sound because I think might be a good idea. If it doesn't sound good, I won't use it, but I guess maybe it sounds good. And then I have the C7, finally our 5 chord going to the 1. Instead of going to the 1, it's going to the 3, the A minor 7. This is very common. You can always play the chord on the 3rd degree instead of the 1st chord and still play F major on top of it. Instead of thinking this is not a 2-5, A minor 7, D7, right? We would be thinking if we see that, oh great, it's a 2-5. But be careful, always think about the key that you're in, and you are in F, right? And A minor is on the 3rd degree, the minor 7 chord on the 3rd degree, very often, more often than not, replaces the 1 chord, and it's not such a good idea to play the Dorian scale over this chord, but it's a better idea to play F major, arpeggio, or scale. And then it's like, in my head, it's like 1, 6, another secondary dominant, transforming the 6th chord to a dominant 7th chord, 2, 5, 1. Improvising, I really like to play like stuff like this that I have been starting on the root a lot, so that I just really help myself hear the changes. And then to the B part, which is very interesting, we have a 2-5 going to A minor, right? So in my head I just see B half diminished, E7, A minor. That's a 2-5 going to A minor, right? And I can use the material that I would use on a 2-5 A minor over this chord progression. But still, I also know the E7 is another secondary dominant, 5 going to 3. And I still have in my head that this A minor 7 is on the 3rd degree. And that I just said that it can replace the tonic. But now we have a really long stretch of the A minor chord, and I already think, oh, is it still going to be like replacing the tonic, or is it like more sounding like a new tonic? Is A minor our new haven? And I think it is, and then I'm just playing over it like a 2-5-1 in A minor. Want to outline that I'm in A minor now, I would rather play a minor 6 chord and maybe melodic minor. And now something very interesting happens if you just have a look at the chords that come up now: C minor 7, E, F7, B minor 7, E7, A minor 7, D7. It's more or less a very long progression of 2 5s, right? But if we have a look at the C minor 7, F7, and we can analyze the F7 again, right? It would be another secondary dominant, 5 going to 4, still always thinking in F, right? So it's 5 going to 4, 4 is not coming up, and then I can hear, if I play some choruses over this tune, how I always want to hear where stuff lands. So I hear B half diminished E7 landing on the A minor. I have a long stretch of rest. All of a sudden, very quickly, I have this C minor 7 going to B minor. And sort of, I have a rest here. Just really feels like it. So it's more like a tonic sound here. And then the same chord is a 2 all of a sudden. Because I think it's a 4-bar phrase and the next 4 bars start. And then I think 2, 5 going to A minor. Right? And then it just continues A minor 7, D7, G minor 7, D7, F. And now I'm back in F. And now I'm going to confuse you maybe too much, but I think it's so important. Depending on the context and the place where chords appear, the same chord symbol needs another scale or needs another sound. And in this context of like you know, shifting 2 5s along the fretboard, I would now play so in general for all those chords, C minor 7, F7, B minor 7, E7, A minor 7, D7, G, I would choose the Dorian Mixolydian approach for all of those chords now. And I wouldn't think about the A minor here as a 1 chord anymore and not play the F major scale, because it's just part. You can think about it like parallel motion. The same sound is going to be shifted lower. Yes. So check out this tune, just play along, and just always be sure when you practice guitar that you really feel the differences and trust your gut. If you feel that something sounds off, always check with the original recording. There's a lot of stuff on lead sheets that's not true. So be sure maybe get a teacher or listen to the recording and hear if it really sounds cool what you're playing. And I'll see you next week. Bye!